Okay, so there's a bunch of text messages between Gabriella and Kim D that have been circulating on social media. Mainly where I found my text messages, it was from that account called RHONJ, who. Okay, so that's the account that was basically sharing those screenshots. So, for those of you who missed my episode a few weeks ago, or for those of you who are not subscribed to my Substack, again, I'm just going to say it again, guys. Make sure you follow me on my Substack, which is my blog. I release some videos on there, and I also enjoy writing. So sometimes I will drop things on the Substack that I will not necessarily drop on my podcast. Okay, and that information was in there. So I'm just going to backtrack a little bit. So Gabriella, a few months ago, when Gabriella decided to no longer partake in, the whole trolling and with Jennifer Aiden and Teresa and all of that, she went on a few podcast appearances. And at the time, Gabriella revealed that Jen Aiden and Teresa were plotting against Dolores a few seasons ago to expose Dolores as a cheater. So the scheme involved a fabricated story about a woman supposedly overhearing Margaret bad mouthing Dolores. Okay, this is something that Gabriella has said in her interviews. Like she went on a podcast tour. I think she did her first interview with Chrissy Balls, and then after that, she went on a few other podcasts afterwards, right? So I remember I listened to every single one of them, and at that point, Gabriella revealed the entire scheme. So she said that Teresa and Dolores enlisted her to basically fabricate this entire story about a woman that was at a diner or some sort of, or maybe not a diner, but at some sort of restaurant, okay? And that the woman was heard, um, not that the woman was heard, but that the woman was at the restaurant and overheard Margaret, apparently Margaret Joseph, was at the restaurant and was bad mouthing Dolores. Okay. So again, this is something that Gabriella had disclosed on a previous podcast. So, what she also shared at the time, it was she was trying to expose Jen and Teresa's tactics to harm Dolores, and she was really trying to prove the point that that Jennifer and Teresa are really not good friends of Dolores, or really do not like Dolores like that, which is something that I have shared many times on my podcast as well. In the past, I've always said that I felt like that the relationship was not real, at least not, you know, on Teresa's end. So, so there's been speculations about Dolores being romantically involved with a gentleman named Sid Rosenberg. Okay, so when Gabriella went on a few podcasts, she mentioned the name Sid, but she only said Sid. She never revealed his last name. But because I knew this little piece of information, I connected the dots and I shared this on my Substack. Okay. So I'm not here to judge, guys. Again, I'm not here to say, oh, Dolores is this, Dolores is that. That's not what I'm doing right now. But now that the cat is out of the bag, I'm just gonna comment and give you my opinion on it, right? So obviously you have Jen and Teresa. They wanted to exploit this. And it was very apparent that they do not like the fact that Dolores is popular. Okay. And the reason why I'm saying this is because if you guys fully recall, a couple of seasons ago, Dolores and Jenny then had a falling out. We saw them argue at the reunion. Dolores called Jen Aiden, "See you next Tuesday." Jen Aiden said, "I don't need you to be my friend. I don't need your sticking up," because um, Jen felt like Dolores had more loyalty to Margaret than to her. Same thing goes for Teresa, that exact same season. Teresa, she what was it the season where she threw the entire table on Margaret? I think it was that season actually. The season where they went to Nashville and then she threw that entire table on Margaret. And Dolores refused to, well, she didn't refuse to leave. She was about to leave, but then Frank convinced her to stay back. And then she stayed back with Margaret and Frank and everybody else while Teresa left with Louis. So if you watch that episode of the after show, you see that Teresa says during that interview, "Oh, you know what, Dolores, right there, she broke loyalty because instead of coming after me, she went after Margaret." And at that point, Jennifer Aiden says to her, "I know you think that you have a friendship with Dolores, but Dolores is much closer to Margaret than she is to you. So you kind of need to accept that." So it was probably around that time that Teresa and Jennifer decided to come up with a little bit of a plan so they could hurt Dolores. Okay? But here's the thing, those two, they're not stupid. They just like to play like they are stupid, but they're not stupid. They know that Dolores is a fan favorite, and they know that they cannot go and um, attack Dolores openly because in the court of public opinion, people would not like that. Like the fandom would not like that. Dolores is extremely well liked in the Bravo sphere or Bravo verse. You know, she does like a million charities. She's an animal lover. She's the woman who was able to stay in good having a good relationship with her ex and all of that, right? And she's kind of like level headed and all of that. So they know that they can't really go after Dolores head on. So they had to come up with a plan to try to expose Dolores' secret. And the secret was that Dolores was allegedly, I'm going to say allegedly, having an affair with this gentleman named Sid Rosenberg. Now, what they wanted to do was to basically expose Dolores as a hypocrite because, Dolores, if you really think about it, she's the woman that everybody loves because, hey, she's tough, she's from Patterson, she was married to Mr. New Jersey, and they were living the perfect life. And then one day, Mr. New Jersey cheated on her while she was pregnant, and then he left or she left, and all of that. So people have a lot of sympathy for Dolores, and a lot of people have a lot of compassion for Dolores, right? And that should not be discounted because that was probably a very, very, very tough time in her life. So the fact that the public identifies Dolores with the woman who has been cheated on and should forever deserve the love from the audience and the public and the viewers, I'm sure it must irritate Teresa and Jennifer, especially if Dolores is also involved allegedly in a romantic relationship with a married man, right? So that's probably why they wanted to expose the secret to punish her for her lack of loyalty a couple of seasons ago for siding with Margaret. So now I did share with you guys a few weeks ago that I can't honestly say exactly how it happened, but I can say that someone said something and the name of Sid Rosenberg came up. And because of how nervous the person was around the entire situation. I picked up on that. And that's why when Gabriella said on that podcast a few months ago that, basically Dolores was involved with Sid, I knew exactly who Sid was. And I understood why the person had the reaction that they had at the time. Because for those of you who missed that tea, Sid Rosenberg is a radio host, but he also happens to be married to Danielle Kahn Rosenberg, which is the lady attorney that is involved in a lawsuit with Louis Ruelas and Bo Dido. So the reason why this is relevant is because of the association with the show, with the Real Housewives of New Jersey, and the name of this Danielle Rosenberg being thrown out there. Um, some people were probably very nervous that Dolores' secret would be uncovered. But again, guys, apparently it was something that was well known amongst a lot of people. Even some bloggers have alluded to have known about this for quite some time, and they just never really wanted to say anything because, it's Dolores and everybody likes Dolores. But again, since Gabriella released that piece of information a few months ago, and then, I connected the dots and shared who that gentleman was, I just thought that it would be fair to provide you with a little bit more insight as to what those text messages are online that you are seeing between RHONJ Who or Gabriella.